Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. It's a pleasure to be here with you on July 4th, Independence Day 2020. This video I want to put up just before the eclipse hit tonight. However, as we all know, you start to feel eclipse effects a little bit before an eclipse and a little bit after them. I practice Vedic astrology, so we'll be looking at the eclipse from a Vedic perspective, not from a Western astrological perspective. So, that having been said, um, first of all, this eclipse is really the last of a major cycle of eclipses. And before anyone says anything, yes, this is my natural hair. I I have very naturally curly hair, and it hasn't been tamed in quite a while. So as the COVID-19 virus prevents me from getting to a barber, this is the way I look for the time being. So bear with me. I'll try to I'll try to get better looking, and I'm also going to change perspective so the glare isn't quite so bright. I also haven't had access to a studio, and I've been actually working on getting podcast equipment set up, so that'll come shortly. But in the meantime, this will do in a pinch, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope the quality is good for you. Okay, so essentially, eclipses happen once every, we have major eclipse cycles which start when Rahu and Ketu enter certain signs. So Rahu entered Gemini in March of 2019, and Ketu entered Sagittarius in March of 2019. So wherever Rahu goes, Ketu is sure to follow. And whenever we get these eclipse changes, especially in mutable signs, there are usually significant changes in the environment. So essentially, this would cause a lot of the changes in the United States over the past few years. And I think also this particular eclipse had the extra disadvantage of occurring when Saturn was also in Sagittarius, which amplified the effects. So we had a rather nasty combination, especially around December of 2019, which I've spoken about at length before. The eclipse this time is in the sign. The last lunar eclipse was actually in Scorpio and Taurus, and at least Vedically. And this eclipse, I'll share it with you, is truly in Sagittarius and Gemini. So you can see from this chart that I'm showing up is the sun's. This is a little bit early. This isn't full eclipse. This is the start of the eclipse, and I chose my local time just because it was easier for reference sake. So this is Eastern Standard Time. New Bedford, Mass. Is the calculation plane, and you'll see Sun and Rahu in the first in the sign. This is a Leo rising sign, so the Sun is going to be extremely important. The effect of the Sun on this eclipse is going to be extremely important. But when we're talking about a lunar eclipse, the Moon is the more important planet. So 2 weeks ago, the Sun was the more important eclipse. So you saw a lot of governmental authority being questioned, a lot of government rebellion, a lot of government upheaval and mistrust occurring. What happens when this particular combination hits is there tends to be a reversal of that particular pattern, and you're starting to see people, especially people connected with police and connected with governments, starting to basically try to take control again. And I'm not saying that's positive or negative. I'm just saying that as a fact that's what you're seeing happen. So there may be a little bit of questioning of your governmental authority, but it's not going to continue. Mars aspects the sun in this eclipse. It does not aspect the moon. Saturn's in the second house from the moon, so this will be kind of a panicky time. And something came up that I thought was fascinating yesterday, because for months I was predicting that the coronavirus would increase and spike um, in when Jupiter re-entered Sagittarius, which it did a couple of days ago. Well, the spikes are happening as I predicted, but apparently there's, and I don't know how much of a factor this is, the virus has mutated to become more contagious, according to according to Dr. Fauci and others. And this is an interesting phenomenon because Jupiter will spread things, but K2 will change it. So even though Jupiter and K2 are far apart, one thing I have to ask people to keep in mind is K2 and Rahu maintain their effects. They're such powerful entities, they maintain their effects at any point that they're in a sign. So even if a planet is at 1 degree or 0 degrees um, of a sign, and Rahu is in that sign, then Rahu will affect that planet. If K2's over here in this nakshatra, which is towards the beginning of Sagittarius, which is Mula nakshatra, which is not a really good nakshatra, but it is good for money. And Jupiter's over here, right at the end of Sagittarius, K2 will still affect Jupiter. So, and vice versa. So essentially, the distance is kind of interesting. Now, one thing that you'll notice here is we have a Sun-Jupiter mutual aspect in the chart. That's pretty important. You have a Sun-Mercury-Rahu combination in the chart and a Moon combination. So this gives a certain amount of what I would call public panic to a situation. The interesting thing of this is that we have received jobs reports which indicate that the unemployment rate has dropped over 2 months by roughly around 6%, which is really a really rapid drop. But again, since I've studied this stuff in other jobs and in other environments, I know that that's a more complicated formula than we know. But there have been a lot of jobs added. And in terms of the economy reopening, I don't think the upsurge in new cases will necessarily slow that down. I think it'll encourage the government to take more precautions. This eclipse, by the way, at least the eclipse point does sit right on top of the U.S.'s rising sign. So essentially, K2 is sitting pretty much right across the United States ascendant. So a lot of astrologers were looking at Pluto being in the first house, or close to where it was when the United States was first came into being. And you really don't need that kind of. I'm not saying it isn't relevant. You know, Pluto is certainly relevant to a lot of Western astrologers, but you really don't need it, at least in my judgment, because we have K2 there. K2 does similar things to what Pluto and Neptune do. So you'll have a lot of disruption in society over the next few months. It won't be years, it'll be months. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And one of the things, so there'll be other disruptions which will be as a result of the major planetary period the United States is in. So the United States, as it was during the Revolutionary War, is in the Rahu major planetary period. So that indicates a lot of disruptions, a lot of panicky activity. However, one thing I want to underscore is keep something in mind when you're listening to news, when you're listening to government officials, when you're listening to anybody. Maintain a high sense of trying to think of a good way to put it without getting myself into trouble. Maintain a high level of critical thinking, because this combination, especially aspected by Mars, gives an opportunity for lying flat out. It gives an opportunity for misrepresentation. It gives an opportunity for distortion. So no matter who's talking, except for me, I'll always, no, I'm obviously I'm kidding, but except for somebody you trust implicitly, um, be careful about trusting judgments, especially panicky judgments, because Rahu likes to panic people. Rahu's job is to panic people. Sometimes it panics people for good reasons. So if people have to take positive action or corrective action, that's good. If it's a real, and K2 over here makes people, it actually produces more damage than Rahu does, at least I've seen, but it causes more earth changes and more dramatic effects, and we'll look at that in a second. But basically, whenever you have this kind of a combination in a chart, you'll have a lot of distrust, a lot of good judgment coming in. Jupiter's moving backwards in the sign. It is showing, so you're going to see the development of remedial measures for the virus and for the economy much more quickly than previously, and maybe much more rapidly than expected. Also, this chart overall is favorable for economic progress because Venus is in the 10th house in its own sign in Taurus, which tends to be a relatively mercantile sign. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second, just because I want to talk to you about talk to you more directly. And I think it's important, certainly everybody wants to take precautions. I don't think people want to get necessarily panicked over the next few months. There will be violence in the streets. You will see some reactionary measures taken by the government. I hate to tell you that, but that's what I see happening. And you will start to see more of a law and order vibe starting to take place across the United States. As a matter of fact, it's already happening in certain cities. So with that being kept in mind, the next few months are going to be interesting. And we can actually spot the next few months by just looking at the eclipse pattern and looking at signs. So I'm going to go back to sharing the screen again. This really doesn't my favorite way to do it. But so you have, and this is the first time I paid attention to these, but these are kind of important. We have little planets here. Yamagata, Yogi Point is technically not a little planet, but it's a calculated point. And that indicates prosperity. That indicates some renewal. Indra Chapa and Upa-Ketu are little planets which are like Venus and Ketu, and they're in the 10th house, and that's good for action, good for financial progress. We want to see there's an important Upagraha, called Indra Chapa, and we want to see where Indra Chapa is. And Indra Chapa, we were just going about Indra Chapa, Yamagantika, my apologies. Yamagantika is a Jupiterian little planet. And that's in the 4th house, so it does indicate a return to some normalcy, but it's with a little Mars kind of a planet, Duma. So when we're looking at these little planets, and I'm only giving you like the previous snapshot, these are like little amplifiers to both good and bad things in the chart. So this Indra Chapa is good because it's like Venus. Upa-Ketu is good because it'll produce unexpected growth. It's a little bit like Ketu. Mars in this 8th house, not so great because there'll be abuses of partnerships and abuses, and also like I said, lies. But I mean, the good thing of it, this doesn't indicate war. Mars would have to be much more actively involved in order to start a war. It's not going to start a war in Pisces, and it's going to stay up in Pisces really pretty much until the election. The other thing you want to look at when you're looking at charts, or when you're looking at these things, is you want to look at where the 6th house and 8th house rulers are. And you have the 6th house ruler in the 6th house, which is what's called the Vipreet Raj Yoga. So that'll speed up progress. Again, we're not going to be completely out of the woods of this virus really until at the earliest late September. A lot of people have criticized me for saying I didn't think there would be a second spike, or this spike right now is not a second round, but I don't think there will be a second spike. I think there'll be a remediation and a vaccine relatively soon. I think actually as early as September there'll be an effective vaccine, to be honest. It may take a while to dispense, but it'll be there. The other thing we're looking for in the chart is some signs of economic recovery. Now, overall, you're going to see good growth for the next 2 weeks or so. Then a little bit of slowing down. People will get a little bit greedy and very impatient to reopen between July 15th and August 15th. And that'll be mainly because Venus will be in this sign. And around September, you'll see a lot of financial growth because Venus will be in Cancer, and also some financial progress all the way through, pretty much through the fall. So there might be a slight break between July 15th and August 15th because of impatience and because of fear and because of panic. But overall, with Jupiter moving to this sign, aspecting Venus, I actually expect the economy to basically switch around and show like really erratic growth between July and September, but growth nonetheless. I wouldn't be very shocked to see like around a 67% unemployment rate by the time of the election. I don't think we're going to see much higher than that, and that prediction on my part may be even a tad too optimistic, but that's the feeling I'm getting from looking at this data. The other thing we want to look at is issues with other countries, and for that, what I normally do is I look at the astro mapping. And in the middle of the country, you're going to see, I would say, because of Venus's position, you'll see some domestic protests happening around the Great Lakes, all the way down to Mississippi. The only Mars line is showing up connected with the Western Hemisphere is really over Brazil. So Brazil looks like it's in a little bit of trouble, some violence, and definitely some problems with the governments of Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina during this time span over the next 3 months, and maybe some changes in governments in Paraguay. The other factors we want to look at is, so Venus, some panic in the United States. I said before we're going to see another stimulus package by August, and I think that will result in payments out to people too. Venus is next to the Hawaiian Islands. There's a slight Mars line there, so some possibility of eruptions in the Hawaiian Islands, some possibilities of eruptions or earthquakes near Japan, down here in Malaysia, I believe that is. I used to be so much better at geography than I am now, and Australia, or Indonesia, excuse me, Indonesia, and some shakeups or some flooding in the Philippines and in probably near Korea or near China. The other part you want to look at is this cluster of transits in Western India. So Western India, we have Saturn going up through northern India around Delhi, or close to Delhi, not quite there. And also we have the moon hitting Pakistan. So it looks to me like border tensions between those planets and border tensions between China and in India continuing. I don't think those will go away anytime soon. If we're talking about California, looks safe from volcanoes or earthquakes for a while. There is a small Mercury line running through through Iran, and that looks like, unfortunately, the pandemic will get much worse there. And also if you go a little bit to the west, you can see in Turkey, there's a Mars line running right through the middle of Turkey. Now, this is the middle of Turkey. This is not Istanbul, Ankara. This is the middle of Turkey. So we're talking about any earthquakes that'll be happening in the middle of Turkey, not to the extreme west or the extreme right. Okay, so if there are any problems in that area, then they'll come from that. We do have a Rahu line passing close to, I have to gaze in a little bit. Yeah, close to Saudi Arabia. And that will cause some economic panic in Russia and Saudi Arabia. In terms of, I want to talk a little bit about the elections. In terms of election fraud, I don't think there's going to be very much this year. I think there'll be allegations of it because the parties are going to be interested in that. But Rahu is really the closest over here, and I'm not seeing a lot of Mercury and Mars lines in the continental United States. So I'm seeing some in Alaska, and if Alaska is subject to voter fraud, that's kind of interesting. But I'm not seeing a lot of foreign influence in this election. I mean, not at all. It's Rahu is close to the United States. That's usually what stands for foreign governments. Sometimes Jupiter does, but they're kind of remote. They're kind of detached. So I really wouldn't worry about that much. There will be a Jupiter line running through Eastern Europe. So that section of society could be prone to earthquakes as well, because Jupiter makes things bigger, and it could also produce pandemic increases. But a lot of the pandemic increases we're seeing in the United States, I think, should actually fade out pretty quickly. We're not seeing, I'm not seeing a lot of interaction with disease-causing planets in this particular map right here. So I am seeing a lot in South America, though. And I think what's happened is the transmission mechanism of the disease, along with carelessness in reopening, has caused a spread. A couple of months ago, we were looking at, I live in Massachusetts, we were looking at Massachusetts having the third highest rate of COVID-19 in the country, and now it's down to pretty much stable, the growth curve. And I think you'll see the flattening of the growth curve within about a month or so, a month to 2 months in Texas and a lot of the states that are being afflicted right now. The other thing I want to talk about is there's been a lot of discussion about, so we do have some earthquakes, volcanoes, catastrophes, unfortunately, coming up. There's a Rahu line through Western Australia, which has been more prone to earth problems and flooding on the western side of Australia than we've seen normally. But I think that'll be fairly under control. And Japan is really sort of like Japan through essentially Indonesia looks like it's in a bit of trouble. But if I'm looking at these charts just carefully, I'm not really incredibly worried. I do think the United States will continue to change profoundly over the next few years. Any country that has planets on a Gemini Sagittarius axis a lot of the major disruptions they've been through over the past year, year and a half or so, those will be gone by September. So you'll start to see economies settle down a little bit. And you'll also start to see domestic unrest settle down a little bit. China, although China's had disturbances, continue to have disturbances over the next couple of years, I don't think it's anywhere close to collapsing. I think India has some real financial and some real weather problems in Western India, unfortunately. China does have some issues, though, in terms of, let's just look at that map one more time. China is, yeah, China's got a moon line, and so it looks like there's still a lot of panic. It's close to Hong Kong. It's not quite there. And in its northeastern provinces is going to have some problems. So it looks like they're not out of the woods yet by any stretch of the imagination. But are they going to collapse in 10 years? Who the heck knows? But I don't think so. I don't think the United States is anywhere near collapsing either. We're in what I would call, with the Rahu Mahadasha, we're in what I would call a rebirth cycle. So there'll be a change in our government. There'll be a change in the way we do things. There'll be maybe even economic changes, but I don't see the United States collapsing for quite a while. The other thing is, I want to look at, which I didn't have a chance to look at last time, was the zodiac signs. So for Aries, this is April 15th to May 15th. Good economic progress, although they may find themselves lying a little bit too much or just taking out a little bit too much in order to get what they want. But career-wise, they'll do fine. They'll be pretty stable. Taurus should have a really good month. That's May 15th to June 15th. Again, people with a Vedic Taurus sun should be careful about family matters, disputes with family members, or being lied to by family members, and also about hidden enemies, especially females, and tough bosses, and also fights with friends. People with a Gemini rising, they'll do pretty well. They'll achieve a certain amount of fame this month. They'll achieve a certain amount of recognition. And they'll also receive a certain amount of pleasure. They'll have a relatively happy month for themselves. And also career-wise, they'll tend to do much better, but relationship-wise, will seem very confusing for them. And this isn't meant to be negative. It'll be confusing for them at least until late September, just because of K2's transit through their 7th house. Cancer has good financial gains, good luck overall. Mars is a really good planet for Cancer, for Cancer Sun, and this is between July 15th and August 15th. But they will be spending a little bit too much. They'll be spending money as quickly as it comes in on almost silly things, things they really don't need. So it'll be good for you to watch your money and watch your expenses. In terms of Leo rising, Leo is going to have an interesting month. It's going to have a lot of ambition, a lot of desire, but a lot of frustration in pulling that desire through, because friends will be a little bit uneven and a little bit unsteady. And there'll also be some problems with children. But again, this is August 15th to September 15th. The problems with children will include minor ill health issues. Okay, so it's not really something that you should be incredibly worried about. The Virgo has a lot of career focus, a lot of career luck, a lot of financial luck coming in. Saturn's in the 5th house, so they work hard, but there will be increased fights with relationship partners. And there'll also be increased unhappiness at home, unfortunately, for Virgo. Desire to get away, or desire to do something new, or desire to learn something new. For Libra rising, Libra has a lot of ambition. Again, they'll feel a little bit confined to be at home. They'll feel like they have more pressure on them than usual, but they'll be willing to fight. They'll also have more energy and interest in occultism than normal, and they'll also have better financial luck than normal. So for these two signs, finances look good for Virgo and Libra, but relationship life and home life is a little bit difficult. For Scorpio rising has Moon K2 Jupiter in the second house, so they'll be optimistic, but they'll see their plans thwarted. Saturn is aspecting Mars in the chart. Strong perfectionist tendencies when this combination arises almost always. And you'll also see with this Saturn moving backwards, there'll be this urge to break things down and start anew and try to start from the beginning. The Saturn-Mars aspect, though, does tend to make people, they'll start and go in one direction, and then all of a sudden they'll pull back because they're saying, oh, it's not quite right. So you have to be careful of that. Relationship life should be good. They'll have a good public image, but their confidence will be down a little bit. So just be aware of that. Don't be too hard on yourself. Sagittarius, Sun, Rising, Moon. Some financial blocks because of Saturn in the second house, although if they work hard, they can overcome it. Mars is in the fourth house. That's generally not a good placement for happiness in home life or happiness in relationships. And relationship partners will be very demanding or very difficult to live with. But health problems will tend to go away pretty quickly. And overall, this won't be a bad time. For Capricorn, Capricorn has a lot of work over the next couple of years. Again, the perfectionist tendencies tend to get in the way a little bit too much, but there'll be a lot of work. And also Venus is in the fifth house, so that should be good for luck, good for financial luck. A lot of enemies, but overcome fairly easily, but also watch out for problems with the government. So let's say in terms of taxes or things like that, you should be careful of that. The other, Aquarius has nice home life, nice relationship life, although relationships, they'll be a little bit uncertain about relationships. Maybe too many people will be offering themselves to Aquarius rising. Mars is in the second house, so it'll be a little bit short-tempered. That won't be good for domestic bliss as well. And some problems with children or with creativity. But Venus in the fourth house, very good. It's extraordinarily good for artistic accomplishment. And overall, this sign looks like it's in pretty good shape. For Pisces, that's in the Vedic system, that's March 15th through April 15th. So remember, all these signs are moved back to the 15th of the month, the 15th of the following month. So try to keep that in mind. This particular sign will have a lot of opportunities, but not a lot of courage to move forward. Things will come easily to them. Home life, again, will seem a little bit disturbed. Career life will be good, but will seem to be a little bit, they'll have to be nice to people they really don't like, which is pretty much a part of any career life. But it'll be a little bit more pronounced in this particular case. And I think overall, one of the things that I'm pulling from this sign is that the Mars-Sun aspect will cause a lot of disputes. There'll be a lot of arguing this month, over the next few months, to be honest with you, in every part of life. So I think if you can prepare yourself for that, figure out a way to turn into positive energy like exercise or meditation or something where you can get a creative outlet going, that's the best thing to do. And there's one more thing that I did want to mention about the next few months, and that is, if you hear people getting very pessimistic or very down, try to cheer them up, because there's a psychology involved in anything connected, even with illness, even with economics. And I'm not talking about wishful thinking. There, John Maynard Keynes, when he worked on psychological components, actually indicated psychology was an important factor in economic progress. So the belief that you can overcome something is really important in economic recovery. Now, Keynes isn't really much in favor nowadays, but there have been recent studies conducted back in the Obama years about that people don't always make rational economic decisions. They make economic decisions based upon anger, fear, or in some cases, hope. You know, so essentially, if these are difficult times for us, these aren't easy times for us, but if we can maintain hope, but not naivety, I think we'll look back upon this and say, wow, that really wasn't so horrible after all. Again, I'm not talking about the deaths of people, so please don't say I don't care about the people who died. I certainly do. But if you're in a health crisis like this, and you keep on looking at the negative figures all the time, you're going to start to feel awfully scared and awfully negative. And let's face it, that's not healthy for anybody. So try to be upbeat. As a matter of fact, don't try to be upbeat. Be upbeat, because that's really your salvation. And if you can keep that in mind over the next few months, you'll end up in much better shape. I'm not telling you to be foolish. There's a difference. I'm asking you to be intelligently optimistic. Okay? Because there is an end in sight to this. Even if you believe the worst projections, there's an end in sight to this. And I don't believe the worst projections. I think the worst projections are based upon factors that have already been disproven. You know, like in terms of like economic collapse and things like that. That's not going to happen. But keep this in mind. For every time we go through one of these things, we come out a little bit stronger, a little bit safer, a little bit more knowledgeable than we entered them. It's a high price to pay, I know, and my heart goes out deeply to the people who lost loved ones during this. So that having been said, I want to wish you and yours all the best. I hope you have a great 4th of July. Just be careful. You know, if you don't believe that social distancing or masks will work, err on the side of caution. You know, don't put yourself into like mass environments. It's not. There's no harm done by following those protocols, and I think that you know, and like I said, that's just my bias. I'm a Northeasterner, and essentially, if you just be calm, rather than prolonging it, rather than stretching this out until everybody feels like they're about to snap, we'll come together much more quickly. Okay, so anger feeds anger, defeat feeds defeat, hope feeds hope, optimism feeds optimism. Okay, so keep those things in mind as you're going through this, and if I can offer them humbly, my blessings to you, and namaste. And good luck, everyone. And don't worry.